So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the IAM 8.0 webinar. My name is Mark Bütikofer. Some of you know me already from previous webinars or other meetings, and my colleague Michael Dujak will introduce himself shortly afterwards. So as always in this webinar, you can ask questions in the question tool. If you like, we try to answer the questions during the webinar if it's possible, or at the end of the webinar, we will stay here for some time to answer questions in the question tool. You can also write in the chat if you like, but we prefer questions in the question tool. It's easier to handle them. So then let's get started. So welcome and thank you for your interest in Airlock IAM 8.0, the first major release since many years. And yeah, let's hit the agenda or the first topic. So the first topic which I'm going to present is about IAM 8.0. Why is it 8.0? What makes it special? What makes it a major release? And then Mike will present the new features in the release, or most of the new features. So what is it actually about in 8.0? So you probably already know this picture from the last few webinars, which were a lot about migrating from the old Loginapp to the new Loginapp. I will show this picture one last time in this webinar and no more in the coming webinars. So still a few words on the new Loginapp and on the old Loginapp. So 8.0 is the first version without the JSP-Loginapp. So the fish is now in the right glass and happy, and we're going to take out the water from the left glass now. So I'm not going to talk really about the new Loginapp itself because we've done that in the last 3 or 4 webinars, but still want you to show one last time this picture with the timeline. So we're now here where the arrow points to at 8.0. Again, it's the first release without the JSP-Loginapp, and everything that was tied to the JSP-Loginapp, also like authenticators that could only be used with the old Loginapp have gone, and so on, templates and so on, everything has gone. So the new IAM 8.0 is a little bit smaller and a little bit simpler, but you have to migrate the Loginapp to the new Loginapp before being able to use 8.0. So for the timeline, it is planned that as always, the release is supported for 21 months, which means that the last release containing the JSP-Loginapp 7.7 is supported until middle of next year. So if you're still on the JSP-Loginapp, then it's definitely time to plan a migration to the new Loginapp. So what makes IAM 8.0 a major release? It's the main thing is actually that it's breaking in terms of our definition of breaking changes, because we removed all the features that we have deprecated in the last releases. Since 7.1, we announced features that we will remove in 8.0, and we did that. And it's quite a list of features that we removed. We've hinted on that in all the previous webinars already, and especially the JSP-Loginapp, which is obviously a very large feature that has been removed and replaced by a new feature. So this makes the upgrade to 8.0 a bit more challenging or complicated, because you have to find, if you're using features that have been removed, you have to find alternate solutions, which there are in Airlock IAM. So to make the migration a little bit easier, we have also built in special support for the config migration to 8.0. For those of you who know how to migrate the configuration using the CLI tool, the IAM command line tool, we built in some logic there that gives you better information or the more high-level information about what you have to do before being able to migrate. To be able to migrate, you will have to remove everything from the 7.x configuration that is no more supported in 8.0. So there cannot be plugins that are no more supported in 8.0. And to do that, we give you a lot more and useful hints what to do in the configuration before you're able to migrate it technically. So what else? We enforce database schema migration. So we want all customers to have the same schema again for 8.0. This has been the case for all the 7.x versions. So you could do a schema migration if you wanted to. You had to if you used a new feature, depending on some schema migration, but you didn't have to. With 8.0, we really want to have all the customers on the same schema, so we can make database schema migration easier, and it's also easier for our support team to know where every customer is at. Then I also want to make a note, because there has been some confusion. Migration to 8.0 isn't the same as migration to the new Loginapp. You can migrate to the new Loginapp in any version, starting with 7.5, 7.6, especially in 7.7, because with 7.7, there's actually all features that we didn't plan to remove have been migrated from the old to the new Loginapp. So you should be able to migrate in any of these versions, especially in 7.7, but you can also migrate the Loginapp from the old to the new one with 8.0, but not necessarily with that one. So how, on a very high level, could a migration to 8.0 look like? So this is what I'm going to show you. It's just very high level information, and it's just a recommendation. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but it's in this way, it's the way we know and we have experienced it to work best. So it's best to upgrade via 7.7. So if you're on 7.5, we do not recommend to upgrade directly from 7.5, for example, or 7.6 directly to 8.0. We recommend going via 7.7. This doesn't mean you have to go live with 7.7. You just have to download 7.7, do the migration technically to 7.7, and from there to 8.0. It's a lot easier for various technical reasons. There are details you can find in the documentation. Then after migrating to 7.7, which contains still both login apps, you should be able to remove all the old Loginapp stuff. And as shown in the last webinar, the config editor supports you with that. If you want that, you don't have to use that. So it gives you hints in the, here it's shown in the red area. It shows you stuff that is removed in 8.0. So you know if you still have plugins or configuration parts that you have to remove before migrating to 8.0. So this is just a help if you want to use that. If you don't want to use that, or if you don't want to bother starting IAM 7.7, you don't have to do that. You can also use the CLI, the command line tool, and it will tell you in a little more technical way what plugins you have to remove. Then you should get rid of any features that have been removed in 8.0. Hopefully you read all the deprecation announcements in the last few years, then you're already prepared for this. If not, then it's probably a good idea to look at the list of removed features and think ahead of how are you going to replace them, with what other features are you going to replace them. If that is done, you can actually upgrade the configuration to 8.0 and then migrate the database, or you can do it the other way around. That doesn't really matter. So more information about this can be found in the documentation. Sorry, I'm going to show you that quickly. So if you go to our documentation, as always, you can find in this chapter called Release Notes, you can find the changelog, actions required when when upgrading, and so on. And there's one article, the first one, update guideline, that shows you just what I said with a little bit more technical background and so on. What is also important is the list of removed features, the last section here. So before planning the upgrade, go through this and in detail and see if there's anything we have removed that you're still using, that you still depend on, and think on how you can cope with that. So I'm going back to the presentation. So what else? With the removal of a lot of plugins, especially the JSP-Loginapp, we also reorganized the Loginapp configuration part a bit. We removed everything that had to do only or exclusively with the JSP-Loginapp. It's reorganized a bit. It's named better. So we hope with that you should find things where you expect them. Before that, in the phase where we had both Loginapps, it was a bit of a mess. You could find stuff at places you wouldn't expect it, or then you couldn't find it. So you don't need to manually migrate anything, except for a few things that is listed in the documentation, in the release notes. But actually, most of these changes, or almost all of them, are done automatically. So to give you an idea what it is, just on a very high level, so this is the Loginapp configuration, or the most important parts of IAM 7.7. And in IAM up to IAM 7.7, there has been like some service config and UI config here. Some general config regarding all the services or affecting all the services was here. And then we have some old Loginapp stuff. We have some stuff for old and new Loginapp stuff. So this was kind of messy or complicated. And now it's a little easier. It's actually service configuration and UI is here, and the general configs affecting all the services and the UIs are here. So it's a bit cleaned up like that. So one more thing is, before we pass to the new features of 8.0, is we did a refresh of the Adminapp UI. So it looks more modern. Things should be a bit easier to find, but they're still in the same places. So like your help desk using the Adminapp or the user management tool of the Adminapp, they don't have to find things at new place. It's exactly where it was before. It's just a more modern UI as you would do it today. So with this, I'm closing for this first part, which was really more about the IAM 8.0, why is it a special release, and what about the update? And I'm handing over to Mike, who is going to introduce some new features of 8.0.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome everybody also from my side. As Mark already introduced, I'm going to talk to you about new features. And first, I probably have to apologize to at least some of you. We wrote some marketing lines when we wanted to express that we're really pushing forward and moving to the cloud. We have already quite a few features, but we're adding more features for cloud capability. And some of you misunderstood us that we're already there. We're not yet there, but we're working on it very hard. And I will present to you what we've done in this release to make life in the cloud a little bit easier and a little bit less cumbersome. The first feature is the user trail has now migrated to a database. In the old days, pre 8.0, the user trail was living in files, and if you run a multi-instance setup of Airlock IAM, you had the problem that these files were distributed, and it really was a hassle to get them all merged so they could be displayed in the Activities tab. In the Activity tab here in the admin app, so the help desk user could see what this user that just called him had actually done in the past. Now we've changed that with 8.0. We combined all the user trail logs for all IAM instances. They now reside in the database, and from that, we can much more easily display them. The help desk always sees everything at once, and it's a lot easier, especially in high availability setups. While we were doing that, we also improved the user trail display. For example, we added paging support. As you can see down here, there is the arrows. You can page forward, page down, and you can spring to the top of the log, so help desk user can more easily navigate the user trail information. And we added backward compatibility, several ways actually. You still can use the old logging to file if you want to forward them to a log collector somewhere, things like that. It's still possible. We add backward compatibility. If you do not want to use the database for the logs, you can turn it off, and then the help desk user can use this button here showing logs if he's authorized, and he can still see the file-based log information in the traditional log viewer that you will reach over the button over here on the left-hand side. And we've added backward compatibility in that you can import the user trail logs that you already have into the database. So day one, when you deploy the new brand new IAM 8.0, you haven't lost your user history. It's still there. It's just imported into the database. You're taking it from the database. So that's it on the user trailing DB, which should make existing in the cloud in multi-instance setups much more easy. The second feature that we've added is support for config variables. Config variables is a concept that is especially important in container setups because some things are only known when you start a container. So you really want to pass it into the configuration through an environment variable. Now, how does the feature work? Well, first of all, you have to enable it in the instance properties file. There's a new variable there called IAM config edit to show variables. If that's set to true, then suddenly these little V's will appear in your configuration. And if you click on them, and you can basically define for a particular value or plugin name, you can define the variable that you're going to use for that. And once you've done that, the config editor also shows you a list, a new tab down here at the bottom, and it will show you all the variables that are available in this particular configuration of IAM. So config variables, a new feature that will hopefully help you with the automation of your setups and will make your life easier when you're doing automation, especially in cloud setups, but of course also in on-site setups. This will be hopefully very useful to you. Some more things that are cloud focused. We've added a new persistent layer. We're now supporting Postgres as a database, which of course is important news for everyone that is in the Google Cloud because there is a default database. We've had many requests for that feature. Now it's here. You can use Postgres as your main data repository for IAM. The second thing we did is logging. Apache or Tomcat out of the box was still using traditional logging up to IAM 8.0. With IAM 8.0, it has been by default reconfigured to use logging in a structured format, pass it to standard out, which should make life easier in cloud environments. But of course, you can also turn it back to traditional logging if you prefer that. So you can have it both ways, whatever suits you best. So this is the news on the cloud readiness. Now, moving on to one important feature, and that's Security Token Service. Security Token Service is the official name to something that we internally always think of as token exchange, because it's really about the OAuth token exchange that we've implemented and fully support now with IAM 8.0. For those that are not too familiar with how OAuth, OpenID Connect work and how the token exchange work here, a quick introduction what the intended purpose is. We're starting here. I hope you see my mouse pointer in the user zone where a user logs in using the OAuth authorization code flow or authorization code grant. So basically with the mobile device, he connects to this front-end authorization server, and from this authorization server here, he receives a token, and he can then use this blue token, go through some policy enforcement point, end up with some application server. This application server will decide on whether he's going to accept this blue token or not. So far, so good. This is what OAuth or OpenID Connect have been doing for us in the past. Now, with token exchange, we can extend this scheme and we can talk about backend server zones that need tokens as well, but that need to be protected differently. So what token exchange will do is that this front-end server, now acting as a client, can go to a special token exchange server and use the blue token to receive a different color token. So it really transforms the token, and it's a token that's only valid in its zone. So if the front-end server says, I need to access the red zone, and the backend server here, it'll change the blue token to a red token and will be able to access this. Now, why is this a security improvement? Well, the thing is that the client having a blue token will never be able to access anything in the red or the green zone because the blue token is just not valid there. Some policy enforcement point, some web application firewall or other mechanism that you have implemented here will immediately look at the token and say, this is not valid because it's not signed by an authority that I'm willing to accept. So security token service is really a security concept, and it will help you if you implement segregation of security domains. What does it support in Airlock IAM? Well, the implementation supports various use case scenarios. It's the integrated setup where you have one server that handles everything. So all the color tokens will be handled on this server. You can use it in a hybrid setup, as I've shown you before, or you can even do a segregated setup where every zone has its own authorization service, its own token exchange server, and the token exchange really happens within the specific zone. Whatever suits your needs, you can configure it. It's fully dynamic. One limitation that I wanted to mention right now, we're only supporting OAuth token. There's no support that you can transform an OAuth token to a SAML assertion or the other way around. You can bring a SAML assertion and turn it into an OAuth token. That's not there yet. Should the need arise, then let us know and we can discuss on if you're going to implement it in the future. We're of course supporting all the standard claims, but also non-standard claims can be added. There is fully configurable however you need it. And last but not least, OAuth token exchange is a separate module and it requires an additional license. So those of you who want to use it, you can get in contact with your account manager and they will offer you the additional feature. Now, I would like to turn the tables and ask you a question. Microsegmentation, as I introduced it, token exchange, is this a relevant topic for you? We've added a little survey that Mark will now bring up for you. And you can answer, no, it's not relevant. No, we've already solved it, but differently. Yes, we actually planning on use that even this year. Or yes, it's relevant for us, but we'll only start next year. And of course, you can also say that you don't know. I'll give you a minute to answer, and I'm looking forward to what your responses will be. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and I'll share the results with you. So some of you think it's not relevant. A lot of you have not even thought about it. And maybe a good thing that I gave you a quick introduction, but there is quite a few customers that think it's relevant even this year, and also some that say it will be relevant in 2024 or later. So thank you very much for that. And let's move on. One of the things that we also did is we improved performance. Performance is always a difficult issue. And the first thing we did is we worked on the user search screen. The user search screen in the Adminapp was a topic of some contention because the performance, depending on the setup, depending on the configuration, was really not that great. And we've now added quite a bit of functionality to allow you as the administrators of IAM to pre-configure IAM in a way where responses will be really snappy. So the first thing you can do is you can basically configure which attributes that a administrator or a help desk user is able to search. So you have here the list of attributes that they are seeing. You can configure the default search, so you basically can configure which checkboxes by default are on, which are off. You can configure the matching strategy, which really depends on your database. Some databases are quite good at substring searches, some are quite bad. If you configure it to only search for words, then this has the advantage that most databases are able to deal with that very quickly. And case insensitivity is also something that some databases are good at, some are not so good. So you really should choose a default that suits your database. And all of this is ideal for an index supported search. So if the help desk user uses the prepared method to search, and normally they just hide the advanced options and they don't even see that. They type in what they want to search for. If you add an index for your default search support pattern, then it will be really fast and you will have answers within milliseconds, even if you have millions of users in your database. So this is the search performance on the user side in the Adminapp. And the second thing that's probably almost more important to you, because most of you are IAM engineers and you configure it on a daily basis, we've added we improved performance for validation. So if you have large configurations with tons of plugins, it's now about 300% faster, so about 3 times faster than it was before. So I hope this will make working with the config editor a lot easier for you. That's it on the performance side. Now let's talk about security improvements. We've also added a few things here. The first thing we've added is Airlock now has new mapping templates which have tightened down security. On one side, because Airlock Gateway has tightened down security. Number 2 is we've straightened out our mapping templates for more security. And of course, we removed everything related to the JSP-Loginapp. So the new mapping templates will hopefully be a lot more secure than they were in the past. We've also improved the Adminapp security. We have now a content security policy that allows a browser to tighten down on the security when using the Adminapp user interface. Unfortunately, there is a little conflict with the maintenance message editor. It's now only usable in text only by default because enabling the rich text HTML format of the editor conflicts with the CSP. Those of you that really need to have the HTML capability of the maintenance message editor, you have to turn off the CSP. That's configurable. Everybody else, we recommend that you use the new CSP because exposing the Adminapp even if it's not on the internet, it's a good idea to use the browser technology available today to tighten down on the security. And last but not least, Log4j has been a major thing 1 year ago when the Log4Shell breach was detected. We have now upgraded to the version 2. So we will definitely never have any false positives from some security scanners anymore. We fixed the problem already a year ago, but we've had some reports that people had problems in the field because scanners did not pick up that we had a fixed version of Log4j, and that gave us some negative feedback because of misunderstandings. Unfortunately, the Log4j team has removed support for web lookups. So if you've been using those in the past, you have to reconfigure the Log4j setup. If you haven't been using web lookups, the automatic migration should do everything for you, and the login should just continue to work normally. So that's it from my side for new features, but we're not done yet. Mark will take over and he will also talk about new features that we've provided with IAM 8.0. Mark, you're on.
So I'm back. I'm just trying to share my screen. Wow, it seems to work. Okay, I will talk about two more new features, and then in the end give some information about the release, such as dates and so on. Okay, one more thing that I would like to share with you. With 8.0, we introduced a way to customize the Adminapp, to put in own code into the Adminapp, and it's called user management extensions. So this hasn't been possible in any previous IAM version. So for those of you who know what a generic token controller is, this may look familiar with you. So in the past, we had the possibility to configure what we call the generic token controller, which allowed you to, like, for example, bring in your own authentication token into the user management of the Adminapp. And this is still possible. You can still configure it. You still get the REST API that is generated from it. That's still the same. But with upgrading to a new Angular version, and with also tightening security in the Adminapp, the possibilities, the UI possibilities that we offered in this generic token controller, which was way too complicated anyway, has been simplified. It's now a lot easier to configure, but it's also less flexible. And to accommodate to this flexibility that we had before, we introduced this new feature, or this new concept of user management extensions, which gives you the possibility to add JavaScript code that runs in the browser in the user overview of a user. And so you can actually do show whatever you want, where the hello world is. You can actually display whatever you want. You can call external APIs, you can call custom APIs, you can, for example, combine data from IAM REST APIs with data from external systems APIs, and you could also organize IAM data in your own way, if this helps, for example, for your help desks. So you're given a lot of flexibility within the user management tool with that feature. It uses a JavaScript API. So to do this, you have to write your own JavaScript code, and but then you get the most flexibility of that. So another feature, the last feature I'm going to show here in this webinar, is around event notifications. So in the last few webinars, we've always shown a couple of new events that have been introduced. So ones you see here covers most of the events we had already. They're mostly around second factors and account information, events that are put on the event bus and could then be consumed by an SMS or an email subscriber that sends messages to end users or admins. Now we've added with IAM.0 a bunch of new events. First of all, the login from a new browser event. I will go into more detail on the next slide in a minute. And we have a new event that is published when an email address of a user has been changed, be it from the end user in a self-service or from the administrator or over the REST API, whatever. There's an event showing if context data has been changed, so you can inform other systems or an administrator if for example, a name or the country or an address or whatever of a user has been changed in the IAM database via some way. So this could be important if you have an external system relying on being informed about such changes. So you can go to the REST API and ask for that changes, for example. Or you can also transport the changes in the event itself. And we've also added a new event that is published if a new device token has been registered for a user. Airlock device tokens, for those who don't know it, is something that you usually use in custom mobile apps to tie an account to or to tie a mobile device to an IAM account. So we've also added a new event subscriber. So these are the plugins that take these events and do something with it. As said before, we've already been able to send SMS messages and email messages. Now there's a very generic HTTP caller event subscriber that allows you to call some external system. For example, a REST API, but it doesn't have to be. It's actually just a HTTP request being sent. And you can specify a template and pick up all the data from the event you like to send. So you could, for example, use it to inform an external system that there has been a context data change or an email data change or whatever happened, and then process this information in this backend system. So as said in the beginning, the login from a new browser event, here's some more details. What is this? We've implemented a new authentication step that you can put anywhere in the authentication flow. And what it does, it finds out whether the user logged in the first time from a browser, or if it has already been logged in on this browser successfully before. It also works with apps. It's not restricted to browser. And it will throw a new event if the user uses a new browser. And it is something that you typically use, but not necessarily, but you typically use it with an email event subscriber to send the end user emails, such as you see it here on the screen. This email, it's really an email that has been sent to my inbox, and it's exactly how it is in the built-in email template. It would look like this. So this is usually good for security to inform users about new logins from previously unused devices, so they can react to that if it was not themselves been logging in. So then the last slide of this webinar is some technical information on the update. So the update has been published yesterday evening. For those who probably got the email about it, we planned to do that a little bit earlier, but we had some stuff to add and fix, and we wanted to wait until it's really through all the QA and so it got a little bit later than planned, but still kind of beginning of April as announced previously. So it's, as always, it's published on Docker Hub, and you can download it on the Airlock Tech Zone. And again, to remind you, Airlock 8.0, it's a major release. It contains breaking changes, so it will require manual adjustments even if you're not using new features. So please go to the documentation and read the release notes, especially these actions required when upgrading in detail, and plan the update before it's too late. So because you will have to do something manually, and if you're using features that we have deprecated earlier and removed now, you also have to think how to replace them with other features. It is supported until end of January 2025 to current plans. So as always, it's 21 months from the publication, and there's academy trainings available. And you can find them also on www.airlock.com/academy. Then last thing, if you're still using JSP-Loginapp, it would be the time to plan the migration to the new Loginapp, and with that, we would recommend also do a migration to IAM 8.0. As said before, we recommend doing it via 7.7, but you don't really have to do that. You can do it directly if you prefer that. And if you're using IAM 7.6 or older, we would also recommend to plan the migration to 8.0 in the next couple of weeks or months. So with that, we're actually at the end of the webinar, and we thank you very much for your interest and for staying with us for this 45 minutes about. And I hope it was helpful, and we're still here to answer some questions. In the question tool, you can also reach out directly to us via email or via support tickets. So thank you very much. I will now close the microphone and we will go and answer all the open questions and then stay there for another like 5 minutes if there are no more questions and then end the webinar. Okay, have a nice day and goodbye.